we were just talking about the flip side of Olam haYedidus. Remember, Rav Wolbe had just said that after the stars, Olam haYedidus eino Olam ideali. It's not some idyllic world.
Screen.
Oh yeah, thanks. Share screen. Screen one. There. Now I can move you over to where I can actually see you. Because when I share the screen, the gallery view shrinks, so I can do this. Okay. So he was saying Olam haYedidus eino Olam ideali, right? He said it's not some idyllic, world of where there's no opposition. And he defined the opposition as being cruelty, which he noted is formed from the word achzariyut, right? Only alienation. Cruelty comes from not feeling a connection to other people. And from there, he discussed the question of free will and this idea that you could be born with certain inclinations. Right, the Gemara's example is born under the sign of Mars, and I said nowadays we'd faster talk about a genetic propensity toward whatever, like the body makes too much adrenaline, and therefore you tend to be this kind of reaction, or you inherited this kind of wiring, or whatever. But it's the same basic idea that that somebody is born with an inclination, and the Gemara's case was born in the sign of Mars, so that they're inclined to shed blood. And the Gemara said, but the person still has a choice whether they want to do it as a bloodletter or a robber or a moel or a shochet so the basic skill, the basic inclination could be channeled toward Yedidus or toward Achzarios. And from there, we got to this paragraph, which I kind of rushed through because I was already watching the clock. And yeah, this is not a good thing that my meeting is right after the class. Okay, so kan anu magin l'she'elas b'chira hachavshis. So I'm gonna chazer this paragraph again. So now we reach the question of free will. Right, because he just talked about the guy being born on Mars, under Mars, sorry. Oh no, he didn't do that yet. That's this paragraph. There's no specifically evil inclination in a person. Coordination. A person can choose to build the Olam haYedidus through the coordination of his various forces, abilities, potentials. The word koach has all three of those definitions. Like we talk about something going min hakoach al hapoel, from potential to actual. So the force and potential are the same word in rabbinic Hebrew. But in any case, through these inclinations, through these forces in a person, potentials that person has, if they're coordinated by the seichel, right? The mashal I gave last time was like a conductor of a orchestra. Hashimush bahafraza bekoach echad ohis mardus leseichel gormim la'arisat olam haYedidus. If overuse of one specific force or rebellion against the intellect, they cause the destruction of the Olam haYedidus. B'reira zu hi b'yidei adam. So the choice, a person has choice. Im livchor, a person has the opportunity to choose is more what like Barera is. Zuhi bidei adam im livchard, if he actually does choose haYedidus o behisnakrut, with Yedidus or alienation. Right, there's a nechar from a stranger. Achein hu yachol livchor. Therefore, he could choose. But Talmud on Motziim dugma kazu. The Gemara, we see this example. Haiman de b'ma'adin. So, somebody was born under the sign of Mars. Yehei gever oshid demaya. He'll be somebody who sheds blood. Iumna, whether he's a makizdam, a barber surgeon, a bloodletter. That's the way I was looking for. Oganva, or a robber. Not a thief, because a robber is somebody who is willing to shed blood. A thief is somebody who's doing it unobserved. O tabacha, or a butcher, o moalo, or mole. Same thing, he translates the Aramaic for the Hebrew-speaking audience. Ein biyad ha'adam l'shanos es hatchuna basisis b'tziyur zeh hanetiya l'shvichas damim. A person cannot change this fundamental inclination in this way toward bloodshed. Ella aval gam b'tchuna zu hu yachol ishtamish b'tova. But this inclination too, he could be using it for the good. V'keshet havshariot hu rechava, the spectrum of possibilities is broad. Hu yachal liyos rofe shoched or moel. Even within the positive, the Gemara gives 3 examples of a doctor, a shoched, or a moel. Rak haganav she'ein nirta b'martzeach, the ganav who's not afraid of having to kill his victim. Hu mishtamish b'tchunaso b'derech shel hisnachrus. He is choosing to use this inclination in a way that alienates others, in a way that is cruel, that is alienated from others. Harei lanu dugma mitchuna kitzoniis. So the Gemara offers us an extreme example. B'chol zos ein shum hechrech sha'adam yiyeh rash al yada. And even so, there's nothing compelling a person to be evil over it. Yesh lo b'chira lishtamish ba l'mataros. He can choose to use this ability to an end which helps achieve shleimus. Navi kan dugma historit mechazal. We will also bring a historical example from Chazal. Binyan zeh kivan shara Shmuel es David Admoni. When Shmuel saw David and he was a redhead, he puts Admoni in quotes. I have a feeling because he didn't want to take it literally as redhead. He saw him as a red person. I mean, there's a Navi. He could have seen that David had a red aura. Mm-hmm. But it's generally taken to be he's a redhead, and all redheads are hot-headed, of course. So Nisyare zeh shofech damim. Esav. So he was afraid that, like Esav, who Chazal also say was a redhead, he is Edom. I mean, that's after the bean soup, but still, he is called Edom. So he's pictured as a redhead. So he thought that this David guy is going to be a bloodshedder like Esav. Amar lahu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, im yafe einayim. If he has generous eyes. Esav midas atzmo.
Am Yifeinayim, a nation of Yifeinayim.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. We had the same thing last time. I made the same mistake twice. And I even re-prepared it in between. And I still made the same mistake twice. Esav, this is why I can't lane, because when I'm on display, these things fall out the back of the head. Anyway, Esav midas atzmo hu horeg. Esav kills who he wants to kill. It's on his own initiative. Aval zeh midas Sanhedrin hu horeg. But David kills the people Sanhedrin tell him are appropriate to kill. Mm-hmm. Truth is, David killed more people that Urim Tumim told him to kill. because that's the process by which a war was approved. So David, I think, killed more people in war than in judgment. But that's his. I mean, I'm not going to argue with Rav Wolbe. I'm just going to think that I would have given it differently. Mikal makom gvul yesh lebechira. There, but still, there's a limit to choice. As hatchuna b'sisis efshar lishanos. You can't change the ultimate, the fundamental inclination. But siyur hanal, in the example that we gave above, hanola b'netiya l'shvichas damim, somebody who was born with an inclination, a propensity for bloodshed, en yachal lakar netiyazu, he can't uproot it. Raka b'chira b'yado l'shtamish ba l'tov o l'ra. He only has the choice to use it for good or for evil. Lebinyan olam haYedidus o laharisaso, to build the olam haYedidus or to destroy it. So this is where I raise the question: how can somebody who has an entire book of Adim? 1 second, I have to let Ariel in. So how does somebody who has a whole book of Adim say that we can't change Amida? So I have something of an answer, but I mean, we raised this a week ago, so maybe somebody else has something they want to say before I speak. What struck me was he phrases it as B'tzir Hanal, right? The example above, Hanolad b'netiya l'shvichas damim. Somebody is born with a propensity for bloodshed. Eino yochol la'akor netiya zu. He can't uproot this netiya. Would he be okay with my reading between the lines? And this doesn't seem to fit the rest of the paragraph. That it's okay to whittle it. It's possible to whittle at it. That if you repeatedly use it constructively, it changes. But you can't just choose not to obey it. You can shape it, but you can't erase it. I don't see him making that distinction anywhere, but I could live with his statement if I put in that distinction. He has to be saying something, because as I said, my problem is not from first principles, although I have a problem from first principles. My problem is it's inconsistent with the man's other writings. Like Rav Wolbe talks about changing midos for hundreds and hundreds of pages. So I have a dilemma with the idea that he's actually trying to say that you can't.
Micha, I think that changing a midah is different than uprooting a midah. Because change can be small or it can be large, but uprooting, I mean, I work as a gardener, and uprooting is a totally different thing than modifying what you've got there. It means that it's not there. It will never come back. You will never experience it again. And that, I think, may demand a change in who you are, not just control over who you are, and the small pieces of modification that we can make by practicing over and over again over a lifetime.
Right. The only problem I have with this, and I mean, that's a variant on what I was saying. I mean, it's consistent with not 100% the same, but close enough. The only problem I have with it is I don't see it in his words. Like, I can't take his words at face value because it doesn't fit his other books, but it's not what he's saying. What he's saying is you can use it constructively or destructively. He doesn't actually say you could change it, but you can't uproot it.
True.
So I really don't know what to do with the You know what I mean? I could live in terms of my own hashkafa, I could live with that distinction. I can't really say that's what he's saying. I don't know how he resolves the conflict because he doesn't. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's not a. Now, before we read the next paragraph, assuming that we're ready to move on to the next paragraph, you unmuted, so I assume not.
Who's talking? Is someone trying to talk besides me?
No, you're the you. Sorry. You didn't see me turn to face your image on my screen?
No, I was looking at the text. I'm not sure. We did address this slightly last week. We said that maybe a person doesn't know what their quote tchuna habsisis end quote is, right? In other words, you think it's X, but maybe it's not X, and therefore you should work on X.
That's assuming that when he talks about tchuna habsisis, he means like the keystone midah of the arch, and not you have many fundamental midos.
I'll use the example of somebody who's born under Mars, right?
Right, but he could have also been, born on the fourth hour of the day, which gives him this ability, and he could have been born with, Venus 2 inches away from Mars, which gives him that ability. No, I just don't know what he means by basisis. He could mean basisis in distinction to tchunos created through habit, right? Like tchunos, and therefore there'd be more than one. Or he could be presenting a model of a person where there is one keystone midah. I can tell you, which firsthand, whenever he discusses a midah, Rav Wolbe portrays that midah as the central work in our avodas Hashem. And if we master this one, all the other ones would fall into place. And then you get to the next midah, and he explains how that midah is the central one in our avodas Hashem. So he could very well be supporting the idea that a person has a midah basisis in that sense. But I had always taken him as saying that the midah basisis is a perspective, not a inherent. Like if you're working on your character, if you're working on anava, then you should be viewing your whole character as being founded on your anava, and if you or gaiva, depending on, But if you were working on bitachon, then you'd say everything's based on bitachon, and of course everything actually is based on Islamdos.
Right.
I don't mean that seriously, but that was Rav Wolbe's worldview. I mean, I'm not saying that seriously that that's my worldview. I also don't know if he means that all of your character is based on Islamdos or all of Musar work is based on Islamdos. But he was upset when he asked all his Talmidim, what's the one most important thing I taught you? And nobody answered that.
Mm-hmm.
I got that story from Wolbe, Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe, who runs a kollel called Torch in Houston.
We're in yeshiva together in Muncie. But did you see Micha Jordy's points? I think Jordy raised some good points.
No,
here.
I can't because I can't look at the screen. I can't look at your faces and the words and the
I said take
chat.
a look from our faces for a minute and look, or unless Jordy's
Okay.
tell us.
Even if one cannot change one nature, we can always practice
Hey,
more
Ima,
positively.
pick up the phone. Hey, Ima, it's me.
Right, but the problem I have is that you're drawing a distinction between building that muscle, as you put it, and changing a midah. And I don't see in his words that there's a difference. In other words, how would you describe exercising the muscle to make it stronger in a way that you're not saying that the midah the muscle is of has gotten larger? How is that itself not a change in the midah?
Well, that's a second degree change, but
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying I have the same discomfort with it that I had with the way I put it, and that is, you really see him here saying you could use it positively or negatively. He doesn't actually say you can shape it. He's like, you're stuck with it. So use it to be a Moel, use it to be a butcher, use it to be a doctor.
Think of it as like being on a treadmill in a way.
Yeah.
You are still, I mean, you're exercising, you might be moving a bit, or let's say like, or even think of Sisyphus. Even if you have to push the rock all the way to the top, it always falls down, and never you will be higher up the mountain than if you just stay at the bottom of the mountain with a big rock. So it will always be useful to practice improving your midot.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I have no problem with your idea. The problem I have is it's so obviously the thing I would have expected Rav Wolbe to say.
Huh?
The fact that it doesn't fit the words here bothers me.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, we've so far seen 3 variants on the theme
Mhm.
that really focus on the fact that he talks about Ein Yachala Coordinatiyazu. You can't get rid of, if you're born with an inclination, you have that inclination, right? You're not erasing it, but he doesn't actually say that. Therefore, you should change, reduce it, enlarge it, pointing in the right direction. He just says use it constructively. It just bothers me that he doesn't give any of these, whatever. You understand what I'm saying? I think. I hope. Because I'm just repeating myself, so I want to stop myself from repeating.
Micha, I have another thought about this.
Yeah.
Rav Wolbe is talking about the idea of using this personal inclination in a positive way, directing it in a positive way. That's also not the same thing as trying to change a midah. I think
not also. That's my whole problem. My whole problem is that his answer to having a midah is you should focus on using it constructively, like for haYedidus.
Right.
But when it comes to Alei Shur and he's doing vadim, he's talking about increasing the midos you want more of and whittling down the midos you want less of. Why doesn't he mention any of that here?
Because it's easier for a for an audience that's not involved in any kind of this kind of Musar ideas to imagine turning an inclination to simply directing it somewhere else instead of trying to change it, which is the work, as we know, of a lifetime.
I just want to remind you that we're not actually learning Olam haYedidus. We're learning an essay called something and psycho. Where is it? Where is it? Right. Psychiatry and religion.
Right.
Right. And it's in a medical journal. So it's not the target audience of the secular Jews that right. His target audience are probably psychologists.
Okay.
No, I'm just, I'm keeping that in mind or bring that to the front as I try to process what you're saying. That's all.
So I would say that if his audience is psychologists, thinking of the psychologists that I know, and I don't know if it's the case of psychologists back in his time and his place. There are psychologists who work on a very concrete level that want you to say, okay, this is the situation I'm in and how am I going to change how I react to it, how I behave with it. And then there are those who say you need to address the issues inside. There are 2 different techniques and 2 different paths of psychology, actually.
Right. Right here. I'm going to move on because I can't handle silence. And after I hear saying, I accept what you say, I have no response. Nobody else responded either. So I'm moving on.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about how Freud has fallen out of fashion and so forth.
Freud wasn't that far out of fashion when he wrote this, remember?
No, he wasn't.
Um,
Neither
but how do
restless
you-
soul was quite Freudian, but that's for another topic.
mhm.
How do you begin to reshape, say, the neural pathways of the grooves of the midot that have been ingrained over decades that you want to change?
Um,
I mean, like, if you're going to begin without, falling back into the routine of
well,
that midot.
so right, so that actually the word routine is very fundamental. Moser always focuses on two things. One is having a hispilus experiential relationship with learning something relevant, not learning something relevant with your head, but like repeating it over and over and all that sing song that your Rebbe may have used when he taught you Gemara, and for that matter, I'm falling into sing song now, and but that kind of that's one, and hispilus is a whole subject in and of itself, and the other, the more behavioral piece, was usually based on building habits. So like Moshe, John, and I were in Avad on the phone, over the phone, because in order to get Avad organized, we had to go pretty geographically far, and we couldn't get all in the same room. And we actually worked on some of Rav Wolbe's Va'adim in Ali Shur Volume 2, which is why I keep on saying to Moshe or to John something like, firsthand, because I'm pulling from that history. In Ali Shur, he has you do a small exercise. He would have his Talmidim do it for a couple of months. We Americans couldn't stick to one thing a couple of months. It became a little rote quicker than that. So we would generally be about 2 weeks, 3 weeks average, typically. Sometimes it was only 1 week. Typically it was 2 or 3 weeks. Typically it was 1 week of doing it right, and it would last 2 or 3 weeks because, the first week, we forgot to do it, that kind of thing. But in any case, it actually is exactly what you said. It's all about routine. So if you start small and incrementally building up other routines, you can whittle away at a midah that you are upset with how much you have, or build a midah that you believe Hashem wants you to have more of. In Rav Wolbe's worldview, you only do the latter. That's like the central theme of his parenting book. It's Zriyu Netiya Chinuch. I don't know. It's available in English. Planting and building and child rearing. But the main theme is that you plant and you build. You don't prune. It's not. You don't deal with your kid's temper. You deal with your kid's patience, or frustration level, or whatever it is that's causing the anger. But you build up the deficient midah that's causing the anger to happen. You don't attack midos. But that's Rav Wolbe's very 20th, 21st century way. I mean, he barely touched the 21st century, but it's a very modern way of looking at things. Right? You don't tear something down, you build up. So you start building a habit of doing doing what you want to see done over and over again. In fact, I believe.
Yeah, that comports with Rav Wolbe's emphasis in avoiding corporal punishment.
Well, that motivates his emphasis in avoiding. I mean, his discussion of avoiding corporal punishment is written from the starting point that I just gave.
Right. Yoel Finkelman has illustrated how that's different from a lot of the classic sources.
Yeah and no.
Times have changed.
Well, more than that, more than times have changed, his audience has changed. So if you're Rav Yisrael Salanter, and people's lives were what's the expression, Jordy? Brutal, harsh, and short.
Nasty, short, and brutish.
Thank you.
That's right. That's from that is from Leviathan. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're not given what's the thing, but yeah, sure.
No, but if that's your life, And most people had, to give an example that I've had to deal with, most people, have felt child mortality in their own life. They lost a child, they lost a sibling, they lost a child and a sibling, most likely. I mean, this is kind of this is the normal, this was the normal life. And adding a little more, corporal punishment you relate to very differently when pain is a normal part of your life. You have the same problem with tinnitus, right? Fast days for us distract from the message of the day, because by 2:30, you could be thinking more about your stomach, or at least, those of us who don't have a tight rein on their appetite.
Yeah, I mean,
But a
look
lot
at
of
all
people,
the-
right? But you have to remember that just 130 years ago, the number of people who had 3 meals every day was much smaller, and missing a meal was a normal part of life. So my point was, like when Rabbi Yisrael Salanter talks about think of the day of death was more immediate in their experience. We've been able to push it so far away that thinking of the day of death or anything negative, any of the negative tools that Rabbi Yisrael did are much more of a turnoff to us. So I wouldn't say times changed and the theories changed. I would say times changed and the people who have to use them change. What worked for Rabbi Yisrael Salanter's audience wouldn't work for Wolbe's. So even if they had the exact same theory, they'd still be giving different prescriptions. And that, I think, is straight out of Alan. Right. I think that's an idea I got from Alan. But in either case, it's mine now. So that's the yeah.
So I guess more people in that era were able to, or was just normal to do all the fasts the Arizal prescribes for things.
I don't think so. I think it was more common, but I don't think everybody.
I mean, like things like the Me'am Loez seem to regard that as absolutely normative, but
Yeah, but the whatever. The Me'am Loez is a totally different world than anybody I know. I mean, it's written Ladino. I mean, I can't say anybody. My Mechutanim, I have a Mechutin whose parents spoke in Ladino when they didn't want him to understand what they were saying. So I can't say it's like nothing that I'm used to, but I can't really. I mean, I'm used to dealing with East Europeans and maybe Yekis. Like don't ask me about the world Me'am Loez. I just don't know it.
yeah,
Wanna
maybe it's
practice your
because I'm
Spanish
digitizing all
somewhere?
these
I can
Florianic
teach you some
things in the
Spanish,
library.
What'd you say, Jordy?
Sorry.
I can teach you Spanish if you wish. That way you can do some Ladino.
No, Ladino. Me'am Loez was translated by Rav Kaplan.
Oh yeah. Oh
who
yes.
learned Ladino just to translate it.
Yes. The language is quite fun. I remember seeing some translator read it. Me'am Loez. I have yet to read. I'm not fluent enough in Ladino to actually read in the original, but
My understanding, though, is that understanding Ladino for a Spanish speaker, or at least a Castilian Spanish speaker, is about as hard as understanding Lakewood conversation if you speak American. It's not like Yiddish to German. It's more like a local jargon.
Indeed, it's Yinglish. But it's
well, that's why I said Lakewood conversation.
Yes.
Because remember
It's not really English. It's its own vocabulary, its own grammar structure. It's
right,
not
but it's mutually comprehensible.
It is.
Or mutually incomprehensible.
Okay. Yeah.
But
German and Yiddish are different languages altogether. They're not different dialects.
They're quite different. They have diverged quite a bit, but that's another conversation.
Okay. Let's get back to topic. Let's get back to topic.
Fair enough.
Okay. Kan ba Torah le'ezras haseichel. Oh, so yeah, I wanted to say something before I read those words. In my little mashal of the seichel as the conductor and the midos as the various instruments in the orchestra, what would play the role of the sheet music?
The Torah?
Yeah. In fact, even if you don't want to get as Zohar as Histakel Baraisu Bari Alma, that Hashem looked in the Torah and created the world. Histakel Baraisa Bari, Adam Hasholem, right? Look at the Torah created the complete man, person. That I think is incontrovertibly, fundamental to understanding what Torah is. So kan ba haTorah le'ezras haseichel. The Torah comes to help the seichel. L'chas gets ha'adam livchor b'tov, to help a person choose good, not choose well. Well, choose well, but I think tov here means good, not well. Batov. You understand the English I'm playing with. The Torah Yisrael Melchemes Harama Neged Kol HaTofaos HeHisnakrus. Remember that he defined the world of the Torah as the world of haYedidus. So the Torah of Yisrael, right, is fighting in the trenches against all of the forces of alienation. L'chein Reishis Kol Kavanas HaTorah. So therefore, the fundamental, the first thing, even though this is Shara Precious Perik Beis in Chovas Halvavos, not Perik Aleph, but L'chein Reishis Kol, the beginning of everything, Kavanas HaTorah Lahamshich HaSeichel B'chol Taivas HaNefesh. It's to impose the intellect on all the desires of the nefesh, which we know is the more physical aspects of the soul, L'hagbiro Aleihem, and to allow the seichel to overcome them, from the word gvura. So as the Chovos HaLevavos puts it, the purpose of the Torah is to give the seichel control over the more physical aspects of ourselves. Related, by the way, to Parshas Balak, you notice how there's a repeating theme of people who ride donkeys in Tanakh, right? From Avram to Mashiach. Yeah, well, Bilam does not actually ride a donkey. I know everybody says it's a donkey, and the people who made what's it called? Who made Shrek thinks it's a donkey, but everybody else rides a chamor. And Bilam's animal is an ason.
Those of us who don't have so much farm experience, isn't an asan also a donkey?
An ason is probably, I mean, it's not 100% sure because this is a rarely used word for a zoological whatever, which means that there's going to be people arguing about the translation. But the most accepted traditional translation is a hinny, which is a mule-like animal, except the genders of the parents are reversed. So if a mule, I don't remember which is which. If a mule is a horse, a male horse and a female donkey, then a hinny is a female horse and a male donkey.
Okay.
Okay, but it's a mule-like animal. A chamor.
Right.
Okay, what's different between a chamor and a ason, in from a etymological point of view, is a chamor is physical. Right, that's a recurring theme, by the way, in the Gruz Parish al Kama Agados. Although the one Agada we saw didn't do any. Oh yeah, no, it did do something with chamor. The donkey brays in the night. But the chamor is chomer, right? And a person riding a chamor is a seichel in charge of the physical forces in their self. So this mental image is that of, when Chazal talk about Avram riding a donkey or Mashiach riding a donkey, I mean, the pasuk says Avram rode a donkey, but the way Chazal look at that is we're being told that Avram had a seichel that controlled his physical taivas. Whereas a nason is a tool. It's also the word for a handle. Aleph Dalet is a handle, not Aleph Tuf. But a nason is a tool. It's not it's something you're with. It's a means. It's a totally different relationship than what we're talking about with a chamor. So the fact that Bilam does not ride a chamor is significant. Whatever you do with a son aside. And here what we're saying is that the Torah gives you the ability to ride the donkey. This is also, by the way, in the introduction to Cheshbon HaNefesh, not the original. In the Slabodka reprinting of Cheshbon HaNefesh, so they have an introduction that they add in front of the introduction the author has, and he talks about training your Yetzer Hara the way one trains an animal, exactly the way one trains an animal. Gives the and that's again because they see controlling midos in terms of developing habit. So he gives it's like training an animal. You don't teach your Yetzer Hara, you train your Yetzer Hara. But also he talks about riding a donkey, that it's the seichel in charge of the Yetzer. Okay, but this is a very important paragraph, the rest of this, because now you'll finally understand why I thought that the last topic was relevant to this topic. It's not trying to be dochet, to push away the desires. Remember the guy born in the sign of Mars. We're not trying to get rid of that desire. Ela lahamid kol koach al makomo, putting each koach in its place. Shazui derech haTorah b'chol mitzvoseha. This is the way of the Torah in all its mitzvos. V'yesh leTorah shalosh amudim. And the Torah has 3 pillars. Ashlosh devarim ha'olam omeid ala Torah ala avoda al gemilas chasadim. Amar Shimon HaTzadik. That's a interesting order of quoting, but you've seen the Mishnah before. Limud Torah mashlim es ha'adam atzmo. So learning Torah completes a person. Avodas Hashem b'veis hamikdash b'tefillah. So the first pillar completes a person in themselves. Avodas Hashem b'veis hamikdash b'tefillah miskasheres osanu im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is a reprise of what we saw in the Maral. Gemilas chasadim hu haYedidus im hazulas. Elu heim chelkei Torah. These are the divisions, the sections of the Torah. But Torah makpida, right? The Torah is makbid. What's makbid in normal English? Is considers it significant. Not makpida. What's be makbid? Come on, my English is leaving me.
It's makbid.
To be makbid is not to forgive, not to forgo. It's important. Gives significance. Gives. I don't know. I can't think of the word. Gam al tzuras adina shel hisnachrus. Also on the pleasant appearance
Precise,
of
punctilious, strict, impatient, pay heed to something, insist on something.
I think I know now why makbid is part of Judeo-English, because none of those really capture what makbid means. I mean, yeah, in a way, to be makbid is like you're going to be very punctilious, but
Understand what makbid means.
yeah, okay. I wasn't right. Not all of us come from yeshivas, Masha. So
From Lakewood.
okay. Oh, I'm sorry. When I was talking about Lakewood conversation, I didn't mean that personally.
Yes,
I mean, obviously, if you spoke that way, you wouldn't have your job. So, Gam al Surah.
I can do what they call it, code switching.
Okay. Ki terech hamor son acha rovetz tachas masa'o. When you see your enemy's donkey struggling under its burden, V'chadalta me'azov lo, azov ta'azov imo.
Mhm.
Right? This is the famous halacha that if your enemy is having a hard time unburdening his donkey, you should rush to unburden it with him. Tells us, by the way, on this says something really incredible. Who is your enemy? Since lo sisnes achicha b'levavecha, right? What?
So someone who did not hear, but you're only a single aid, single witness.
Right. So Tosfos says basically what Moshe does, but a little more broadly, it's somebody who's a Russia you're allowed to hate, but you're only allowed to hate them because they're a Russia. So the second you start hating them, you get into a negative cycle that takes you beyond the permissible hate. And that is why you have to rush to help him, because otherwise you're layering more history of hatred on top of the hatred that the pasuk actually originally allowed. But it's interesting because it gives you an idea of the Torah's attitude toward hitnakrut, where even the person you're allowed to hate, you're not allowed to be alienated from. He doesn't. Rav Wolbe doesn't go through this pasuk as to that extent, but it is on his theme. Ki ha'his almus minazek chavero means nezek chavero. He his nakrus lo tuchal lisaleim. If you hide yourself from somebody else's damage, then that is a form of his nakrus.
Is he contrasting doing an action of hisnakris versus doing a passive hisnakris? Is that what he means by tzura adina shel hisnakris?
I don't know. I mean, here in the pasuk, he's definitely talking about leitaleim, which means to hide oneself, to blind oneself to the right, which is an example of inaction, right? You're not going to help him take off the donkey. Tzura adina shel hitnakrut. Why would hitnakrut look good? Because you hate the guy. See, that phrase was where I got the idea that even somebody you're allowed to hate, or he doesn't go say allowed, but even somebody you hate, you're not allowed to be alienated from. Because somebody you hate, alienation is tempting. See, that was the way I read it. Tzura adina shel hitnakrut is because you hate the guy, so you want to be. I mean, it looks good. It's appealing to avoid it, to distance yourself from him.
Maybe even when you hate somebody, if you're allowed to hate them, you have to have some sort of connection with them.
That was exactly how I'm reading these lines. That was where I was trying to pull out of these lines. And the tzura adina is that you would think that because I hate him, it's tempting. It's aesthetically pleasing to, right? That's what tzura adina is, right? Aesthetically pleasing. Yeah.
More of a subtle
But
thing.
tzura adina could very well be, the pleasant form of hitnakrut could be inaction. The Torah is makpid even on inaction. I read it as the Torah is makpid even in places where hitnakrut would be pleasing, would be pleasant.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
But either way, the Torah is makpid. So, I mean, I can't know which one he meant to point us to because they're both things he'd very likely say.
Understood.
Ba'od sheila achas aleinu ladun. We have one more on this particular subtopic. We have one more question to explore. Ha'im haTorah makira b'tat hakara. Does the Torah recognize the subconscious, the unrecognized, the under-recognized? Tat is under. It's Aramaic for tachas. Hakara, what you perceive, what you recognize. So it's unconscious. Hatshuva hi chiyuvit. The answer is in the negative. But Tanakh anu motziim. In Tanakh we find ki Hashem bochein klayos v'leiv. Hashem judges the kidneys and the heart. So just as kidneys is a metaphor that fell out of use. I think we've discussed them before because before we had liver, that one of the aspects of the soul lives in the liver. I'm going, why liver? Why not kidneys? But it's the same. It's below the heart. The idea is that it's close to the organs of procreation.
And I would now feel in my kishkis.
Right, but klayos also have another implication because they're filters.
Yes.
So klayos separate out the good ideas from the bad ones.
Kishkis too.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that.
The Gemara says in Hurrius, Klayos Yayetzes, right? The Klayos give advice.
Yes. And the lave it accepts it or not. But Talmud Koveya Klayos Yoatzos lave.
There you go.
Yes. Sorry, Yoatzos lave maven. They only the understanding heart. The non-understanding heart.
No, Klayos Yayetzes, Lev Maven, two separate things.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a Klayos Givetza to the heart. That's where I was going before. We read the pasuk, right? It gives advice to the heart that listens. So I saw it as to the heart that understands, they give advice. The heart that doesn't understand doesn't hear their advice. But I like yours better, especially since it's probably right. A Klayos give ideas, the lave understands them. Gives advice, the lave understands it. Halevu makom.
I remember from Hurrius, but I'm not going to argue with the citation.
Knowing it from Harios does not tell you one thing or another about knowing whether it's in brachos.
No, it's probably from Brachos. I learned Brachos more.
No, but it could be. No, I'm saying is there are sugyas that appear in two places. So
Yeah.
In fact, they remember one place says nothing. Halevu makom ha'akara. Conscious thought is in the lave. Haklayos letat hakara. The klayos are unconscious. Ulam hatat hakara sha'aleh dibru kan chachmei Torah. This unconscious that they are that the sages of the Torah are discussing, Eina zu shel Freud. That took me forever, by the way. Shenotra al yedei hadchakas yitzarim o chavuyos biltin imos. See, it's not by suppression of desire or unpleasant life history. Begam lo hai moda shel young hamamin archetypes hamekananim but be moda collectivity. Yes, I have a hard time with mangled English words because my mouth wants to say the normal one.
After a trip to Israel some 10 years ago, a friend said if you're having trouble trying to understand the word, it's probably borrowed from English or Russian.
So I'm gonna detour into a childhood memory.
Yeah.
Right. When I was too young to understand the book, I decided I was going to learn Isha Halacha. I must have been, like a freshman in college or something. So I was going to learn Isha Halacha. There was no halachic man yet. So maybe I was even younger. And so there I am with the Hebrew, my father's copy. I get to footnote number 5, third page of the book. And it's the wheel. It's all about the wheel. The wheel this, the wheel says that, the wheel implies the other thing. What the heck is this with the wheel? Until I get to this long thing, which was clearly not Hebrew, and I was able to piece together it was Kierkegaard. Then I went back and realized it was Hegel, not Hagal.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's what I felt when I got stuck on Freud. But obviously Jung didn't pose a problem. But Freud to me, because there's only 3 letters that aren't semi-vowels, it looked like a Hebrew word.
Mhm.
So when I got to Jung, I already had Freud under my belt, so I didn't get stuck on that one. But in any case, back to the actual text. So what he's saying is that even though Chazal talk about an unconscious, it's not what his psychologist audience is going to recognize as unconscious,
Mhm.
right? It's something that is not conscious, but it's not caused by suppression, and it's not caused by bad life experiences, and it's not caused by some global, archetype from Jung. Anu mitkakim kan l'biar gra. So he's going to go with the Gra Hagon Mivilna, which is an interesting thing to have to write because this is still a Torah journal, even though, like, you think his audience is learned. Kol darchei ha'adam nimshachim achar ratzon harishon. All the desires of a person are pulled after his initial will or desire. All the ways of a person are drawn after his initial will or desire. Kamosha ola al rucho baratzon harishon. Whatever his pre-conscious will or desire is, Haim Zachim Me'inav, that is what he finds meritorious. Or the way I put it in one of my signature file quotes, I have a randomizer that every once in a while updates my signature file with another quote. So one of them reads, the mind is a wonderful organ. For justifying conclusions, the heart already reached. Although in the words of Chazal, it would be the heart is a wonderful organ for justifying conclusions. The kidneys already reached, but metaphoric
Where's that
parts
quote
of the.
from?
Oh, it's from me.
Oh, you originated that quote?
I made that up. Yeah, I made that up.
Really? Wow.
But I made it up the first time I learned this paragraph. I mean, like it's his idea. I just came up with a aphoristic way of saying it. Assuming aphoristic is a word. Kolomar haratzon misrakim b'ma'amakim ka'ela. Right? Ratzon is I don't know if I even bothered translating Rakim when I read it to myself. Embroids itself in the that's right. Rakim is macrame. B'ma'amakim. So it ties itself into these depths. She'ein hakarasenu shaletas bahem. Will runs below the conscious mind. Ha'ani hayadua lanu. Ourselves, our ego. Maybe we'll just stick with selves because ego is already going back to Freud, and we don't want to go to Freud. Hu rak chelek katan ma'od mimahus ha'adam. The self that we're aware of is only a small part of the essence of what is the substance of what is to be a person. Ratzon ne'elam mekivun darkenu heim kolayos yoatzos. The will that is buried, that guides our way, is the kolayos that give the eitzes. Asher pu'ulosenu pulasan. Their work, inenu margishim bofen yashir. We don't feel it in a straightforward way. Laman hakitzur anu tzrichim levater kan halaba dugmaos me'atorah. Halhava laman hakitzur, for the sake of space, to keep things short, we will have to skip many examples from the Torah. Ketzad poel haretzek harishon hazeh. How this initial impulse works. Nistapek ni'ilomar. Well, it'll have to be sufficient to say כי הרצון הנעלם יכול לשאוף לעניינים שבגוף ושברוח. The ratzon, right, will pull somebody to matters of the body and the ruach, which remember was where ego and jealousy reside from the gra. See, I really think this is all one topic. I mean, I may have been reading Olam haYedidus into those sources, but Wolbe definitely read those sources into Olam haYedidus. Okay, Moshe, you're a little happier with what I did now.
Micha, you and I are good.
I mean, I don't know if that was the Maharal's intent. That's why I backed off. But it's definitely the way Rav Wolbe is learning that Maharal.
Fair.
And the Gra. Mitzad Torah, hayinu tzrichim lidaber al tat hakara. From the Torah's perspective, you would have to talk both about that which is below the conscious, the subconscious, v'gam al hakara yeshnam, v'gam al hakara, and also a superconscious, and above the conscious. So when I translated this in that PDF that I sent you a link to, I called it subconscious and superconscious. Yeshnam ritzonos ilaim mitrak
Sorry.
mim b'neshama ha'elokit. There are desires that to elevate, for growth, for, nowadays we call it spirituality, which are all knotted in, they are embroidered into the neshama, the godly neshama, asher b'kirbeinu, which is within us. Heim midabranim osanu lisalos musaris liskarvus el elokim. They goad us into going up in a musar way and to get close to God. I was about to say godliness, but that's not what he says, right? He's talking about just getting close to God. The haim, having a connection to God. The haim avian osanu lahargashos los bioter, and they bring us to high feelings, to lofty emotions. Ratzon rishon ruchani zeh haya ro'i likro al hakara. This initial desire, which is spiritual, we could call al hakara, above the conscious, the superconscious. V'es hamunach tat hakara hayinu tzrichim lishmor l'rtzonos rishonim hashoavos lemilui ma'avim gufanim, and we have to watch ourselves against the tat hakara, the subconscious, which is busy there pulling us down to a physical level. V'nei haritzonot ha'al hakarati.
But we would, if I'm understanding them correctly, we would call both those inclinations or consciousnesses subconscious, right? He's just dividing them by which direction they're pulling us in.
Well, what he's saying is that, okay, I was going to stop at the end of the paragraph. After he cites Frankl, Viktor Frankl, but we let's just finish the paragraph and then we could schmooze, because there's 20 minutes left and we might use it all schmoozing. Ein hatfisa hazos, but remember, I mean, hold the question, just like so, because I could forget. Ein hatfisa hazos al hatat hakara. Oh no, I skipped the line. The desires which are superconscious, that bechleit einam pachot chazakim, they are no less strong. Meritzonos hatat kartiyim, from desires which are subconscious. Ein hatfasas hazot al v'tat hakara sholeles, this grabbing, this control of the above and below conscious, sholeles es hamichazinam shel hadchaka.
No.
What? I'm
I was
angling.
thinking
you.
mechanism, but no, that's the wrong
It's the
order.
wrong order.
Center.
Right.
I don't see it either. I would have thought that was
Either,
American. Right.
Okay, where's the race? Yeah.
Yeah. But what's it called? Believes that it's center. It may be. I mean, if you want to look up Kav Zayin Nun and see what the Shorish is.
That's rather odd because usually you use Merkazi and so forth.
Yeah, that's what I said. Where's the Reish? No, that's what John said. Where's the Reish?
Yeah.
Right, but I had read it. Okay.
My go-to Hebrew English dictionary is not finding this.
Shalas Amikazanim Shel Had Chaka. It does not change the forcefulness, which is how I read it, of the push, of the drive. Kvar Har'inu Le'el Shahaya, we already saw above, Shahaya Kvar Yadu El Rabbi Yisrael Salanter Shishim Shana Lefnei Freud, right? Yisrael Salanter wrote about their Dunkel, the non-conscious, 60 years before Freud. About Tfisa Taranit Minugedes Bitsura Harifa Ledato Shel Freud. But the Torah understanding is very opposed, sharply opposed to the position of Freud. Motzi B'Tad HaKara Rak Libido, who says that the subconscious only has sexual drive. Ubechalamos Shehem Chalon L'Tat HaKara Rak Mashma'ut sexual desire. The bottom line is he doesn't go for Freud's idea that the only lower drive is a sexual one. Reyetz Shel Frankel and psychology and religion.
The image of man in the study of the healing of souls.
Okay.
The unconscious God, secular open religion.
Right. See, Frankel actually talks about Tat Hakara, Al Hakara. Frankel's focus is to find a drive that pulls you up, a meaning, right? As opposed to Freud, who's busy worried about sex. So Moshe, you were saying something about unconscious.
I was saying that it sounded like, to me, if I'm getting it correctly, that he's saying what we would call the subconscious both pulls us to do good and to do bad. He's just splitting that into two things, a good subconscious and a bad subconscious. Is that right?
I would say that I would firmly disagree with your just. In other words, in Freud's world, there is no soul, right? The superego is a bunch of recordings from authority figures telling you that you, or society telling you ought to shape up. So the subconscious is all a bunch of negative stuff. And the only thing that pulls you to something positive is your desire to conform and fit in. And he's explicitly going against that, right? He makes a very strong, we don't go with Freud, but I think this is the element of Freud that bugs him the most. That there's actually two different sets of drives, which he is saying it's not just there's one unconscious that he's dividing into two. There's the nefesh and the neshama, each of which don't operate on a conscious level. And therefore, there are two sets of drives coming from two totally different places.
So is that another way of saying the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Ra?
If you think that Yetzer Hara is a drive to be physical and Yetzer Tov is a drive to be spiritual.
He's not just talking about physicality, right?
Well, he ties it to the nefesh.
But he's also talking
Ties
about
it to the
Snakros.
guf. What?
He's also talking about the Snakros, and that ties it to Hashem and the connection there, that one has.
No.
to it.
Now you're talking about subconscious again, about unconscious again, right? Just everything unconscious. No. The thing that pull you up is coming from the neshama. In other words, the fact that he says it's nefesh versus neshama right? And
Yeah.
right is saying
Uh-huh.
that the source of physical drives and the source of spiritual drives are different mechanisms in the soul.
I hear you.
So I don't see it as just like a minor, gee, there's two sets of unconscious drives, and I want to be clear, there's the ones we want and the ones we don't want. He's saying yes, the Torah recognizes that there is a non-conscious process. However, it says there are two of them, and they don't resemble what psychology thinks they are.
I hear you.
But I think that contrast with Freud, that Freud has, which he does not make, that was me. I mean, he does say that we add a superconscious, but I think the reason is because Freud doesn't have a notion of soul, and therefore, instead of having a Tov or a al hakara or a neshama, whatever you want to call that thing, right? He has a superego playing recordings that you got from society, telling you better fit in. Like that's his surrogate for a conscience. I mean, a very Jiminy Cricket. Right. Pinocchio doesn't have a drive to be good. He has somebody nagging him that he has to conform to. Kan hamakom lamod b'ktsara al hamistika haYehudit. I really am scared to start this. Okay, let's see how far we could go with it. Okay, we only have 12 minutes. Actually, we have a little more because I can't stay late when we started late, but
So
if anybody has to leave, I don't want to gyp them.
So this is the
running late.
place that stands
Ready, off I go.
between, well, like Bekatzara, the abbreviation of some sorts between them regarding mystical and Jewish mysticism, isn't it? Something of the sort.
This is the place where we briefly dwell on the subject of Jewish mysticism.
Yeah.
Ena Yakut Makira B'Mashinikra Unio Mystica.
Mhm.
Judaism does not teach in a mystical union with God.
That's right.
Nivra Af Pa'am Eino Yachol Yisached Lagamer Im Baro. A created being, meaning us, can never be fully unified with the Creator.
Mhm.
Adam Yachol L'Tar Atzmo, a person can purify himself, Ad Ma'od, very much, B'koch Torah So V'avodaso, through Torah and Avoda, Hu Yachol Li Kanei V'Li Batel Lifnei Boro, Lachni. I want to read this Lachnia, but the Yud's in the wrong place. But in any case, the words are the same. The Shorish is the same. He can subjugate himself and nullify himself before his creator. Achu margish kirvat Elokim elav, until he feels God's closeness to him. Aval tamid hu modal merchak ha'adir shebein nivra ubaro. But he's always aware of the great distance between the created and the creator.
That's the reason I like the word devachut, like devachut, like clinging to God.
Right. Dveikus is, we'll see if he uses it or not. Dveikus is an in word, though, in a different school of thought. He's not Hasidish.
Okay.
But either way, Dveikus is not. Dveikus itself is not unio mystica.
No.
But it's closer than feeling close. Being attached is it's a middle ground between being unified and being close.
Mhm.
But in any case, we'll see if he goes there. Hamikaros halo Yehudim, non-Jewish sources, Hamidibrim al Hanal, who talk about mystical union.
Mhm.
It kavnu kenireh l'matzavim ecstatic. Okay, this is what I say. Like my brain gets stuck on the English.
Mhm.
Misu yamim, right? A certain ecstatic states, specific ecstatic states. Shebehem hergishu ki'ilu isachdu im halokus, where they feel as though they were one with God. Hamakoros halo Yehudim, the non-Jewish sources again. Hamadabrim al Unio Mystica. His kavnu kenir el matzavim ekstatiyim hamisiyamim shebehem hirgishu ki'ilu isachtu im elokus. I have a feeling that there was an editing problem in the person who brought this text to the what's it called.
Yeah. Why is the same sentence being repeated?
It's the same sentence except
No,
one is
yeah.
Hanal and the other one is Unio Mystica.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So whatever. So it's an editing issue. It's a copy issue. Remember, I didn't page scan. I found a copy in HTML, so somebody typed it in. Habihira for free. Habihiras haYedidus shaleles lechalutin hefsharus shalichtas dus mamashit. Right? There's no Jewish enlightenment, I want to say, from Bahir. If you have a better translation, go for it. Sholeles emphatically denies the possibility of an actual unity with God. Still, Torah has its esoteric side. Bahem Osekes HaKabbalah, that Kabbalah deals with. Chelak me'atorah sheba'al peh kamo Talmud. Kabbalah is part of Torah sheba'al peh, just like Gemara is. Aval ima Talmud chiyuv limudo mutal al kol Yehudi. But when it comes to Talmud, every Jew has to study it. Oskim b'Kabbalah rak ba'alei madrega. You have to be on some kind of plane before you could study Kabbalah. Guess I should cancel my charusa before Sunday. Hayu al lidorenu zeh ba'alei Kabbalah. Until our generation, the masters of Kabbalah shayu yotzrei chidushim amukim ma'od b'shetach haKabbalah.
Dinner's ready.
Na'kiv b'ktsara acharei darchei hayitzira shalahem.
So let's stop and discuss it a little bit.
No.
Pay a little attention.
Yeah. For some reason, when I read it, I was so sure what the sentence said. I thought they were like whatever. It doesn't make a difference how I misunderstood the sentence. But I realized when I read it that I prepared the sentence wrong. Like I was so sure that the end was going to be just like all Gemara, you got to learn. Just like everybody, in contrast, everybody having to learn Gemara, the masters of Kabbalah, were very, did not produce, they were careful about what they wrote. That's how I read Dachitzi, but that's not what it says. So it doesn't ignore it. Ignore everything I'm talking about now. Right? So we're going to now talk a little bit about Kabbalah, but that is not this week because John's dinner's getting cold. Because it's too big of a topic. I don't want to start with 5 minutes left.
Yeah, this is.
No, we're going to go back to the Unia Mystica. I really what I expected to get up to today was ending with the psychologists. This idea that he's identifying the ruach with the self, a subconscious that comes from the nefesh and has a bunch of physical desires that should not be limited to sex, like laziness and wanting comfort and let's say food too. My enemy, but is on one side, and our spiritual desires are equally unconscious, and they're all motivating us before we even start thinking. So that what we think is colored by this conflict between what we want. And notice now I've gotten back to the theme of that we got from Rav Dessler, that consciousness comes from at the place of conflict, right? And that the idea that the ruach exists out of a tension between the nefesh and the neshama. These were themes that we had raised before.